The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of the modest Memphis apartment, where 97-year-old Evelyn Margaret Thompson sat at her old upright piano, her weathered fingers moving slowly but surely across the yellowed keys. Despite her advanced age and the arthritis that made every movement a small victory, Evelyn's mind was as sharp as ever, and her heart still beat with the passion for music that had sustained her through nearly a century of life. For the past 6 months, she had been working on something special. A song that she hoped would somehow reach the man whose music had been the soundtrack to her golden years, and whose voice had carried her through some of the darkest and brightest moments of her long life. Evelyn had been a fan of Elvis Presley since 1956, when she was already 76 years old, and most people her age were dismissing rock and roll as noise made by rebellious youth. But something about Elvis's voice, his sincerity, and the way he poured his heart into every song, had spoken to her in a way that transcended generational divides. She had seen him perform live 3 times, once in Memphis in 1957, once in Las Vegas in 1970, and once more in Memphis in 1976, and each time she had been struck not just by his talent, but by his genuine connection to his audience and his obvious love for the music itself. Now, as she faced what she knew were likely her final years, Evelyn had decided to give something back to the man whose music had given her so much joy. The song she had been crafting was unlike anything that had ever been written for Elvis before. It wasn't a love song or a rock and roll anthem, but rather a gentle, wisdom-filled piece that spoke to the journey of life, the importance of following your dreams, and the way that music could bridge any gap between hearts and generations. Evelyn called it "Still Dreaming," and she had poured into it all the love, experience, and hope that her 97 years had taught her. The melody was simple, but haunting. Designed to showcase a voice, rather than compete with it, and the lyrics reflected both her gratitude for the joy Elvis had brought into her life, and her desire to encourage him during what she sensed were challenging times in his career. If this touching story of intergenerational connection and the power of music is capturing your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us continue sharing these incredible true stories about the unexpected bonds that music can create. Thank you for being part of our community. Evelyn's granddaughter Sarah Mitchell had been watching her grandmother's musical project with a mixture of admiration and concern. At 35, Sarah was a successful marketing executive who had inherited her grandmother's love of music, but not her optimism about impossible dreams. When Evelyn first mentioned her plan to write a song for Elvis Presley, Sarah had gently tried to manage her expectations, explaining that celebrities receive thousands of songs from fans, and that the chances of Elvis even hearing her grandmother's composition were virtually non-existent. But Evelyn had persisted with the quiet determination that had carried her through the Great Depression and World War II. The loss of her husband of 60 years and countless other challenges that life had thrown her way. "Sarah dear," she had said with the gentle smile that could disarm any argument. "When you're 97 years old, you realize that impossible things happen every day. The impossible thing is that I'm still here, still able to play piano, still able to dream. Writing a song for Elvis isn't any more impossible than that." Mostly out of love, Sarah had eventually decided to help her grandmother. Partly out of love, and partly out of a desire to ensure that if Evelyn was going to pursue this dream, she would do it properly. She used her professional connections to research the best way to get a song to Elvis's management team, and she helped Evelyn create a professional quality recording of "Still Dreaming," using a small home studio setup that captured both the piano accompaniment and Evelyn's surprisingly strong singing voice. The song itself was a masterpiece of simplicity and emotional depth. The opening lines established the perspective of someone who had lived long enough to understand both the fragility and the persistence of dreams. "I've seen nearly 100 years go by. Watched dreams rise up and dreams say goodbye, but the music in my heart still plays the same, as the day I first heard you sing my name." The chorus was built around the central theme that had motivated Evelyn to write the song, "Still dreaming, still believing, that music heals what words cannot say, still dreaming, still believing, tomorrow's just a song away." What made the song particularly powerful was how it addressed Elvis directly, not as a fan seeking attention, but as an elder offering wisdom and encouragement. The second verse contained lines that spoke to the challenges of fame and the importance of staying true to oneself. I know the weight of all those watching eyes. I know how hard it is to realize that fame's a gift but not the final prize. The prize is in the love you harmonize. After months of careful preparation, Sarah helped her grandmother submit the song to Elvis's management company through the proper channels, including a heartfelt letter that Evelyn had written, explaining her motivation for creating the piece. The letter described her nearly two-decade journey as an Elvis fan. Her belief that music was one of God's greatest gifts to humanity, and her desire to give something back to the artist who had enriched her life so profoundly. For weeks they heard nothing back, and Sarah began to worry that her grandmother would be disappointed by the silence. But Evelyn remained characteristically optimistic, spending her days playing the song on her piano and expressing confidence that somehow, some way Elvis would hear her music. It has its own way of finding where it needs to go. She would tell Sarah whenever the subject came up. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in March 1977, when Sarah was at work, and Evelyn was alone in her apartment. The voice on the other end of the line identified himself as Joe Esposito, a member of Elvis's inner circle, and he explained that Elvis had indeed heard Evelyn's song and had been deeply moved by both the music and her letter. "Mrs. Thompson," Joe said, "Elvis wanted me to call you personally to tell you how much your song means to him. He's been going through a difficult time lately, and your words about 'still dreaming' and 'still believing' really touched his heart. He's been playing your recording over and over, and he'd like to know if there's anything he can do to thank you for this beautiful gift." Evelyn, who had lived through enough surprises in her 97 years to take even extraordinary news in stride, simply said, "Tell Mr. Presley that his music has been a gift to me for 20 years, and if my little song can give him even a fraction of the joy his music has given me, then I'm more than satisfied." But Joe had more to tell her. "Mrs. Thompson, Elvis would like to do something special. He's going to be performing at the Mid-South Coliseum here in Memphis next week, and he'd like to invite you as his special guest. Not only that, but he wants to perform your song during the concert and dedicate it to you." Evelyn was quiet for so long that Joe thought the call had disconnected. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion, yet still steady. "Young man, are you telling me that Elvis Presley wants to sing my song before thousands of people?" "Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what I'm telling you, and he wants you to be right there in the front row to hear it." When Sarah arrived at her grandmother's apartment that evening, she found Evelyn sitting at her piano with tears streaming down her cheeks, playing "Still Dreaming," with more emotion and passion than she had ever heard before. The story of the phone call came out in fragments between songs, and by the time Evelyn had finished explaining what had happened, both women were crying and laughing at once. The week leading up to the concert passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Elvis's management team arranged for a car to pick up Evelyn and Sarah, special seating at the venue, and backstage access so Evelyn could meet Elvis before the show. The local media caught wind of the story, and suddenly, the 97-year-old songwriter found herself giving interviews to newspapers and television stations about her unlikely musical collaboration with the king of rock and roll. On the night of the concert, March 28, 1977, Evelyn dressed in her finest dress, a blue silk outfit that she had worn to her grandson's wedding 5 years earlier, and allowed Sarah to help with her hair and makeup. As they rode to the Mid-South Coliseum, Evelyn remained surprisingly calm. Her hands folded peacefully in her lap as she watched the Memphis skyline pass by outside the limousine window. "Aren't you nervous, Grandma?" Sarah asked, amazed by her grandmother's composure. Evelyn smiled and patted Sarah's hand. "Honey, when you're 97 years old and you've lived through everything I've lived through, you learn that the most amazing things in life are also the most natural. This feels like it was always meant to be." Backstage at the Coliseum, Elvis was dealing with his own emotions, as he prepared to meet the woman whose song had become so important to him over the past week. He had been struggling with health issues, personal problems, and a sense that his career had lost some meaning and direction. But Evelyn's song, with its message of perseverance and continued faith in the power of dreams, reminded him of why he had started making music in the first place. When Evelyn was escorted to Elvis's dressing room, the meeting between the 97-year-old songwriter and the 42-year-old superstar was immediate and profound. Elvis, dressed in one of his iconic white jumpsuits, but somehow managing to look humble and approachable, stood up as soon as Evelyn entered the room and walked over to take her hands in his. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice soft and respectful. "I can't tell you what your song has meant for me. In just a few minutes of music, you reminded me of truths that I had forgotten. Thank you for the gift." Evelyn looked up at Elvis. She was barely 5 feet tall, while he towered over her, and smiled with the warmth of someone who had spent nearly a century learning how to love people. "Mr. Presley, you've been giving me gifts through your music for 20 years. I'm just returning the favor." They talked for 15 minutes before the show, with Elvis asking about Evelyn's life, her musical background, and her inspiration for writing Still Dreaming. Evelyn, in turn, offered Elvis the kind of gentle wisdom that can only come from someone who has lived long enough to see the bigger picture of life's challenges and opportunities. "You know," Evelyn told him, "I've been watching you perform for 2 decades, and I've seen how much you give of yourself to your audience. But I want you to remember that it's okay to take something back from that exchange, too. When you sing tonight, don't just give love. Let yourself receive it. That's what keeps the music alive." When it was time for the concert to begin, Evelyn was escorted to a special seat in the front row, where she had a perfect view of the stage. The arena was packed with over 12,000 people, but as the lights dimmed and Elvis appeared, the entire space felt intimate and personal. Elvis opened the show with several of his classic hits, but even from the beginning, there was something different about his performance that night. He seemed more relaxed, more connected to the audience, and more joyful than he had seemed in recent concerts. Between songs, he kept glancing at Evelyn in the front row, drawing energy and inspiration from her presence. About halfway through the concert, Elvis stepped to the microphone and spoke in a way that was both personal and profound to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to share something very special with you. A few weeks ago, I received a song written by a remarkable woman named Evelyn Thompson, who is 97 years old and has been a fan of my music for over 20 years. This song reminded me of why I fell in love with music in the first place, and it taught me something important about never giving up on your dreams, no matter how old you get, or how many obstacles you face." Elvis gestured toward Evelyn in the front row, and the spotlight found her sitting with tears in her eyes, and a radiant smile on her face. The audience erupted in applause, and many people were visibly moved by the sight of this tiny, elderly woman, who had somehow captured the attention and respect of Elvis Presley. "Mrs. Thompson," Elvis continued, "wrote a song called Still Dreaming, and with her permission, I'd like to sing it for you tonight, but first, I want to speak to her directly." Elvis looked at Evelyn and spoke in a voice that was meant for her, but carried clearly through the arena's sound system. "Thank you for reminding me that age is just a number when it comes to having dreams. And thank you for showing me that music can bridge any gap between hearts." What happened next would be remembered by everyone present as one of the most emotionally powerful moments in Elvis Presley's career. He sat at a piano that had been brought to center stage, and in a voice that was tender, respectful, and filled with emotion, he began singing Evelyn's song. The arrangement was simple, just Elvis's voice and piano, but its effect was profound. Every word of Still Dreaming carried new weight when sung by Elvis, and his interpretation brought out nuances in the melody and lyrics that even Evelyn hadn't fully realized herself. When he reached the chorus, "Still dreaming, still believing, that music heals what words cannot say," his voice broke slightly, and several people in the audience began to cry. But the most powerful moment came during the second verse. When Elvis sang the lines that Evelyn had written specifically about the challenges of fame, "I know the weight of all those watching eyes. I know how hard it is to realize that fame's a gift, but not the final prize. The prize is in the love you harmonize." As he sang these words, Elvis looked directly at Evelyn, and the connection between performer and songwriter was so strong that it seemed to encompass the entire arena. When the song ended, the silence lasted for seconds before the audience exploded into the longest and most heartfelt standing ovation that anyone present had witnessed, but Elvis wasn't finished. He stood from the piano, walked to the edge of the stage, and reached to help Evelyn onto the platform. This Sarah's help from below, and Elvis's assistance from above. 97-year-old Evelyn Thompson found herself standing on stage in front of 12,000 people, holding Elvis Presley's hand as the audience continued their thunderous applause. Elvis handed her the microphone, and in a voice that was surprisingly strong, Evelyn spoke to the crowd. "I want to thank Mr. Presley for the most wonderful surprise of my long life," she said. "It's never too late to create something beautiful, and it's never too late to share love with the world through music." The audience's response was both immediate and overwhelming. People were on their feet, crying, applauding, and calling out words of love and encouragement to both Elvis and Evelyn. The moment stretched on for minutes, with Elvis and Evelyn standing together on stage, representing different generations united by their shared love of music and their belief in the power of dreams. When Evelyn was helped down from the stage, Elvis finished the concert with renewed energy, dedicating each remaining song to "the lady who reminded me what music is really about." The performance was recorded and later released as a live album, with "Still Dreaming" becoming one of the most beloved tracks in Elvis's catalog. In the days and weeks that followed, the story of Evelyn Thompson and her song for Elvis spread around the world. She appeared on television shows, gave interviews to magazines, and became a symbol of the idea that creativity, passion, and dreams have no expiration. The song itself was covered by many artists, and became an anthem for older adults who refused to let age limit their aspirations. More importantly, the collaboration between Elvis and Evelyn had a profound impact on both their lives. Elvis continued to perform, "Still Dreaming," at every concert until his death 4 months later, and he often spoke about how Evelyn's wisdom and perspective had helped him reconnect with his love for music during a difficult period of his life. For Evelyn, the experience of seeing her song performed by Elvis marked the fulfillment of a dream she hadn't even known she held. She continued to write music until her death 3 years later at 100, and her family donated her complete collection of songs to the Country Music Hall of Fame, where they are preserved as examples of the power of music to transcend age, circumstance, and expectation. The piano where Evelyn wrote "Still Dreaming" is now on display at Graceland, with a plaque that reads, "This piano belonged to Evelyn Thompson, who proved that dreams have no age limit, and that the most beautiful music comes from the heart." Regardless of how many years that heart has been beating. Their image often speaks about her grandmother's legacy, and the lesson that the collaboration with Elvis taught her about supporting the dreams of older adults. "My grandmother showed me that wisdom and creativity don't diminish with age, they deepen," Sarah says, and Elvis showed me that true greatness lies in recognizing and honoring the gifts that others bring to your life, regardless of their age or status. Today, the Evelyn Thompson Foundation for Senior Creativity provides funding and support for older adults who want to pursue artistic projects, and the annual Still Dreaming Award recognizes seniors who have made significant creative contributions later in life. The foundation's motto, taken from Evelyn's song, reminds us all that, tomorrow's just a song away. The story of the 97-year-old fan who wrote a song for Elvis Presley continues to inspire people around the world, proving that age is no barrier to creating something beautiful, that music can bridge any gap between generations, and that the most profound gifts sometimes come from unexpected sources. It reminds us that deferred dreams are not denied dreams, and that it is never too late to share our gifts with the world. This incredible story of fulfilled dreams and intergenerational connection through music shows us that creativity and passion have no expiration date. If you were moved by Evelyn's courage and Elvis's gracious response, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it is never too late to pursue their dreams or to create something beautiful. What did you think of Elvis's decision about performing Evelyn's song? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to hit the notification bell so you will never miss our inspiring content.